One of the biggest criticisms lobbied at PlayStation since the PS4 era and going into the PS5 is the fact that PlayStation doesn't have any multiplayer games developed in-house that are first party developed, and this new kind of direction that PlayStation is taking is going to help correct that issue. They are bringing on a lot of new multiplayer style games, and definitely that new energy was felt all throughout this showcase. But are they going at it the right way? Let's talk about it real quick. But before we talk about it, do me a favor, you guys. Like the video. If you guys enjoy the video, please consider subscribing, as it does help me out tons. And let's get into this real quick. Alright. PlayStation seems to be banking in on this whole live service idea. They're bringing a lot of new IPs, a lot of development team, a lot of talent to kind of create the new wave of live service games. My only issue, I feel like, is the fact that it doesn't feel, at least currently right now, that there's much separating these games. Herman Holtz had an interview a couple of weeks back, pretty much stating that the live service approach is going to be different. That PlayStation is going to target different audiences and different genres of games, and they're going to be very different from what we currently have and very different from one another. Well, a lot of the live service games that they showcased, like from Fair Games to Helldiver 2 to Concord, a lot of them felt very samey, and it didn't really, in my opinion, live up to that whole promise that Herman Holtz said, where they're going to be different. They're going to feel different. Yes, these games are taking place in different settings, and yes, they all are technically different style games, but they're very similar in the sense that they feel like they're all guns, they're all PvP. There's nothing really much beyond that core premise. Sure, Fair Games is a heist game. Marathon is gonna be a extraction shooter, but they're all small team based PvP slash PvE style games. So one of the things that I'll say is, even looking at like the CGI and the kind of like theming of these games, they clearly have a PlayStation level of polish to these live service games. The problem is, though, if you have 4 or 5 of these games that are small group based shooter style games, how big of an audience are you going to be able to cultivate when you're kind of separating your group up? You're kind of separating that market up. And, like, for example, if I'm really into Helldiver 2 and that's the first one game coming out, it's going to be harder for me to convince my group of people to hop into another live service game or even juggle 2 live service games. It's not as likely to happen. Me and my brothers play Warzone and Call of Duty a lot because it's what we know, it's safe, and it's something that we can just get together and not really think about too much. And if we were to switch from that to another style game, we only really have the energy to be playing one of these games. So it's going to be harder for us to commit to playing 4 or 5 of these games. Not to mention that PlayStation wants to have 12 live service games by 2026. So my question is, if they have different style live service games, I really want to see that. Like things like the Horizon multiplayer game that's mentioned. But yeah, I guess my fear is just that there kind of seems to be oversaturating themselves with these kinds of PvP live service games. But I do think that there is a good side to this. I do think, one, they're throwing out new IPs, and always love new IPs. I don't know what the hell Concord is. I don't know what the hell Marathon is. I don't know what the hell Fair Games is. Helldiver 2 is a sequel to Helldiver, but it is definitely a different take on Helldiver. So they definitely look like they're willing to risk it on this. And as long as they can keep that same energy, and PlayStation is very interesting when it comes to things that they get committed to. But if they can commit to this and kind of keep these engaged, and maybe we have something here. But yeah, so if I look at these slate of games and I see, okay, they all look very samey. But what's good about this is the fact that they're being developed by passionate, smaller teams of industry vets that have the talent, that have the passion, and that have the know-how to keep these games engaged. And the one other big thing that's going to keep these kind of games running smoothly, I believe, is the fact that the heads at Bungie are going to be the ones who are going to be like curating these games. They're going to be making sure that they're running support for these games, and they're going to be kind of a guiding force for people like Firewalk and Haven Studios to kind of like move in the right direction and making sure that we're always keeping players engaged. And if Bungie's smart, they're going to know to keep them engaged separately, I think. For example, when you look at Nintendo, they have a couple live service games that people don't really talk about, but they do have a couple live service games. They have like Splatoon 3 and they have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Now, Splatoon 3 always has these Splatfests that always get people back into like playing for a little bit. And every time there's a Splatfest, I always hop back in and play. I even play a little bit before, that way I can warm up before the Splatfest happens. Those Splatfests never happen on the same time that they're going to drop something for like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. They're not going to be dropping new wave of DLC for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on the same like weekend that they're holding the Splatfest. So I feel like as long as you can kind of separate the events, separate the ways of engagement as far as like timing, then yeah, sure, I think people can probably juggle a couple of these and maybe it works. But it's really gonna show how well they kind of manage this when one of these doesn't work. Because, alright, you're throwing 12 live service games at the wall and hoping some of them stick. There's a good chance 50% of them or more are not going to stick and they're going to fall off. There's a good chance that these teams don't know how to keep the games moving and keep the games engaged, like we saw with Halo Infinite. So even though you have a core game that's good and that works, it's going to really be taking a lot of dedication and commitment to get these games going. And it's going to be dedication and commitment not just from the development team, but from Sony as a publisher, from Bungie as a leadership team. And I think as long as all these parties are committed to this, then yeah, I mean, anything's possible, and I think they can get it done. I think they have the right talent, some right ideas. Now I just got to make sure that they land the delivery. Another thing that gets me really excited about these live service games isn't necessarily about the live service games themselves, but the fact that they're going to help bridge the kind of emptiness between Sony's big games. Currently right now, Sony's formula is drop big cinematic game, wait 6 months, drop the next big cinematic game, wait 8 months, then drop the next big game or whatever. They don't really drop games that are consistently being talked about. They kind of just drop that one big game and then another big game, but it's never really like rapid fire games like you would see something like Nintendo does. So I think with these live service games, they can definitely help fill that empty void for someone who only has a PlayStation and plays God of War and then has to wait a damn near year to play Spider-Man 2. So I don't know, hopefully it can keep people engaged onto the platform, and hopefully this gamble pays off for them in the long run. Well, those are my final thoughts on this topic. Let me know down below if any of these games look exciting to you. If you're not really excited for PlayStation's live service move, also let me know down below. With that, I'll see you guys in the next video.